Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Mara Daly. I am the Chief External Affairs Officer at A Better Chicago, and we are thrilled to have all of you on this information session about our Everyday Counts initiative. We will spend the next 45 minutes sharing with you more information about the request for proposals that we shared with the community last week. We are happy to answer any questions that you have, clarify anything that might be on your mind. And we will be recording this session. So if you have colleagues or folks who are unable to make it, it will be available as a recording following this meeting. So with that, I will also be joined by my colleagues, Natalie and Megan, who will be presenting various parts of the presentation. And at any point in time, if you want to ask a question, the chat is open and we will be monitoring that live and we'll attempt to answer questions as quickly as we can throughout. Great. If you want to move to the next slide, Perla. Our agenda will include a very brief overview of A Better Chicago. We will then share more about our landscape analysis work that took place last year, the funding opportunity that we released last year as Everyday Counts, and then answer some questions at the end. We'll try to leave lots of time for questions. Next slide. So briefly, I'll just walk through who we are as A Better Chicago, assuming most of you are familiar with our organization, but potentially not everyone. We believe in fighting poverty with opportunity. We are Chicago's only venture philanthropy, and we believe that all youth in Chicago deserve the access to thrive in their education, their work, their life, and their careers. Move to the next slide. Our model, in terms of what is venture philanthropy, includes three major parts. The first is that we raise capital, and unlike a traditional foundation or other models, we do not have an endowment. All of the money that we raise to invest back into the community is from fundraising. We then identify and support the most promising practices that are happening in the field as it relates to Chicago youth. And we do that through a pretty rigorous diligence process where we're looking at areas of innovation, at really big ideas around programs and practices, and knowing that we have a very high bar for impact and how we track outcomes over time, with a goal of ensuring that our investments are achieving a higher impact than what we might see across the city on average. We then use our platform and our learnings through building this evidence model and sharing across our partners and collaborators to hopefully influence more capital to go back into the organizations that we support. And we also provide management support to organizations within our portfolio along the way to help them build capacity over time. Go to the next slide. We do this through a portfolio of 4 funds. Each fund is intended to achieve different things. The Catalyst Fund are investments that are typically made in early stage organizations. The Venture Fund is in organizations that have typically been around a little bit longer and have demonstrated proof of concept and early results. The Growth Fund is intended to do exactly what it sounds like, to grow and scale ideas that have been around longer. And then we have an Alumni Fund, which consists of organizations that we have partnered with and invested in for quite some time. And they have really scaled and entered the next phase of their programs and no longer need the support of A Better Chicago quite as heavily as they may have in the earlier years, and they're in our alumni fund. So we stay in the family forever and still work very collaboratively, but just in different ways as they have matured and scaled over time. So that's a little bit about us, just to provide some context for how we got to Everyday Counts and the chronic absenteeism work. I am now going to turn it over to my colleague, Natalie, to talk a little bit more about the landscape work. So with that.
Great. Hi, everyone. You can go on to the next slide, Perla. This is a slide of all of our current investments. So this is more of a informational who's in our current fund. So in case you want to ask kind of how we partner with grantees, feel free to reach out to any of these organizations that can share more about our approach and partnership work with these grantees. So again, I'm Natalie Barrera. I am the Chief Investment Officer at A Better Chicago. And over the next few slides, I want to go over some of the major findings from our landscape analysis that informed how we approach the Everyday Counts initiative. So this past summer, we partnered with the Luminary Collective to conduct a landscape analysis that played a real critical role in shaping the design of this RFP, particularly in how we can most effectively support programs and organizations in our focus communities. The analysis included three core components. First, there was a deep data analysis that was focused on traditional neighborhood schools in three communities. And this really helped us understand the magnitude and distribution of attendance challenges and where they are most concentrated, as well as how they differed across different communities throughout the city. Second, the report included extensive stakeholder engagement, drawing on input from students, parents, educators, and school leaders through surveys, interviews, and focus groups. So this grounded the data in lived experience and helped surface where current efforts were working, well, where existing supports were still not reaching students and families. And then finally, the report included policy and intervention scans, reviewing CPS policies alongside local and national models to identify promising approaches, areas of overlap, and gaps in the current landscape. So together, this analysis gave us a more complete picture of the ecosystem and helped us design an RFP that prioritizes complementary, community-rooted approaches that can add real value. So the full report is available on our website, and we will also drop the link in the chat for easy access. And we strongly encourage applicants to review the report as you develop your proposal. You can go on to the next slide. And so when we talk about chronic absenteeism, we want to be clear that it's rarely about students simply choosing not to show up. Our analysis and what we heard directly from schools and families and students show that absenteeism is often a symptom of deeper systemic challenges. And one major driver is mental health. It consistently came up as a top reason for students for missing school. School leaders often shared that schools are increasingly carrying the burden of addressing mental health needs without the resources or clinical capacity to do so alone. So this really reinforces for us the need for partnerships and community-based supports that can extend beyond the school building. We also heard a lot about family and community pressures. Students may be caring for siblings or sick family members. And others cited safety concerns, which obviously is a critical factor. For some students, simply getting to school feels unsafe, whether that's due to neighborhood conflicts or transportation challenges. If students don't feel physically safe, attendance interventions that focus only on incentives or enforcement won't be effective. And then finally, many students describe feeling disconnected from school, lacking motivation, connection, or a sense of belonging. We know that the strongest predictor of whether a student shows up to school is whether they feel like they belong there. And we don't see this as a student level problem to fix, but as a system level challenge that is shaped by school climate, by relationships, and the broader community conditions that students navigate every day. It's also important to recognize the broader context that students and families are navigating in this current climate. Heightened immigration enforcement has increased the fear and disconnection in many Black and Brown communities, which is directly impacting a student's sense of safety and belonging, which are both critical to consistent attendance and engagement. And that context matters for how we invest. And so taken together, these findings reinforce for us why this initiative really prioritizes approaches that address root causes, that build relationships, and that make school relevant, affirming, and supportive, especially in this moment in time. We know that investing in organizations that families know and trust, or that can build that trust, is critical because those trusted relationships are often the bridge that keeps students connected to school when systems feel overwhelming or unsafe. You can go on to the next slide. So through our landscape, we also learned that the traditional definition of chronic absenteeism, which is missing 10% of a school year, offers a very limited view of a complicated challenge. And so we intentionally moved away from this definition and instead adopted a tiered attendance framework that was developed by Attendance Works. So this allows us to understand the varying levels of attendance challenges and to think more strategically about where interventions can add value. So this framework helps us focus not just on whether students are showing up, but on patterns and risk levels and opportunities for early and more targeted support. You can go on to the next slide. I wanted to highlight a few of the findings that really stood out. First, we're seeing that there's a high concentration of students that are experiencing extreme chronic absence. That means that they're missing 40 or more days of school, and that was particularly prevalent in Garfield Park, Austin, and South Lawndale. And so that tells us that this isn't something that can be addressed with light touch or universal strategies alone, that there might be an opportunity to provide more deep targeted support there. We're also seeing that there are clear spikes at key transition points, especially when students move from 8th to 9th grade, and again as they progress all the way through high school. So those moments are when students are most likely to start disengaging, and also an opportunity for us to provide the right intervention that can make a difference. Across students, families, and community partners, the same core barriers kept coming up for us: mental health, motivation, connection, safety and belonging, and medical challenges. So students and parents often talked about health and well-being, while staff and community-based partners pointed to structural issues like transportation or caregiver responsibilities. And both perspectives are true and matter and inform whether or not a young person will be attending school consistently. And then finally, we saw strong evidence that family engagement beyond the school building really works. So strategies like home visits, warm outreach, and parent-centered communication, whether that's by text or email or mail, can really help build trust and address barriers before absences become so entrenched. And so this is an opportunity for community-based organizations to play a critical role. If you go on to the next slide. And then finally, the key takeaway from the landscape analysis is that there is no single one-size-fits-all solution to chronic absenteeism. And we know that schools cannot solve this challenge alone. What the data and community input make clear is that to make progress, it really requires action at multiple levels. First, we have to leverage relationships with students and families to strengthen belonging and connection. Second, there's a need to strengthen school-level systems, specifically around how attendance data is used, how transitions are supported, and how schools partner with trusted community organizations. And third, we see a real opportunity to build stronger collaboration between individual schools, including a more coordinated citywide approach, as well as with CBOs and system partners. So this kind of coalition work is essential to really addressing root causes and ensuring that our efforts are aligned. And so this initiative is designed to support work that really contributes to that broader ecosystem by deepening relationships, strengthening system, and advancing collaboration at scale. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Megan, who's going to share more about the funding opportunity.
Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Minot, and I'm a portfolio manager here at A Better Chicago. So I'm excited to be able to talk to you about the opportunity at hand, the Everyday Counts funding opportunity, and how we're responding to what we've learned through this landscape analysis and research that we've conducted. Next slide. So our investment strategy for Everyday Counts is really grounded in a three-pillar framework that reflects both the realities that students face and the conditions needed for strong attendance. So the first pillar, be here. Students are in schools that are safe, welcoming, and accessible. So this pillar really focuses on whether students can physically get to school. So thinking about safety, consistency, and without logistical barriers. We're talking about transportation, health, safety, housing instability, all of those foundational conditions that make attendance possible. The next pillar in our strategy, belong here. Students feel seen, valued, and connected. This pillar centers on relationships, students feeling seen, valued, and connected to trusted adults and peers. And then lastly, the last pillar, thrive here, focuses on relevance, engagement, and student agency, addressing those instructional and motivational factors that can lead to disengagement and absence. Through this opportunity, we will be investing in programs working with elementary students in the at-risk and moderate categories of absenteeism, and also at the high school level in the severe and acute chronic categories, where the need and opportunity for impact is the greatest. Next slide, please. Everyday Counts will focus on 6 Chicago communities: Austin, Englewood, Garfield Park, South Lawndale, South Shore, and Woodlawn. And so what this slide is outlining here is really how chronic absenteeism shows up differently across these communities and across grade levels, and then what interventions could look like across these different communities. So for example, in some communities like Austin and Garfield Park, we see a large concentration of elementary students in the at-risk and moderate category, which points to a strong opportunity for early prevention and habit building. And then in other communities like Englewood and Woodlawn, there's a clear divide between elementary prevention and stability needs, and then high school re-engagement priorities. And then lastly, looking at South Lawndale and South Shore, we see meaningful need across both elementary and high school, reinforcing the importance of tailored approaches really rooted in local context. Our goal is to strengthen attendance supports in these community areas while also generating insights and approaches that can inform work across the city. Just also want to acknowledge this is a handful of the many communities in Chicago that may also be struggling with chronic absenteeism and how to address that. This is a targeted opportunity that's really meant to go deep in a subset of community areas that we've identified based on our research and our insights. Next slide, please. So we know that many approaches to attendance, mentoring, incentives, case management can be effective. And what matters most to us is not whether an idea is familiar, but how intentionally it is designed to address the specific drivers of absenteeism in your context. We are especially interested in how schools and community partners can work together in new or deeper ways to strengthen belonging, engagement, and relevance for students. Included here are some different possible approaches to the work, strengthening prevention efforts, building strong school-home connections, addressing barriers, supporting those critical transition points, fostering collaboration across and between schools, and sustaining engagement through high school. To be clear, we're not expecting proposals to be able to achieve all of these different strategies. A strong proposal might instead go deep on just one approach, one transition point, one set of barriers, or one strategy for strengthening student belonging, rather than trying to do everything at once. What matters most is that the approach that you choose is clearly connected to the drivers of absenteeism in your context, and that it's designed in close partnership with your school partner or partners and other community organizations that you may be working with. Next slide, please. Turning now to the application specifics, as I mentioned previously in the previous slide, communities of focus are listed here, and proposals should focus on one of 2 priority populations. So elementary students experiencing at-risk or moderate absenteeism, and or high school students experiencing severe or acute chronic absenteeism. For this proposal, partnership is essential. Applicants must have a formalized partnership with one or more public or charter schools in place before funding is awarded. We're also strongly encouraging collaboration across community-based organizations. Multiple organizations can apply together as a collaborative, with one organization serving as the lead applicant. Proposed work should be meaningfully new, expanded, or pilot-oriented, where we are intentionally looking to fund strategies that go beyond current existing work. Programming should be ready to launch in the 2026-2027 academic year, and applicants can request up to $500,000. So as part of the application, you will be asked to develop a project budget and justification to go along with your narrative. The application is open now, and it will close at 5 p.m. Central Time on Friday, February 27th. And we anticipate making funding decisions by July of this year. Next slide. And now we will move into question and answer. We're going to start and lift up some common questions that we think may come up and see if we can address those first. And then we'll leave some time for a few live questions from you all after that. So I will turn it back over to Natalie.
Great. So we definitely see your questions coming in, and we're working on responses, and then we'll also hopefully respond to some of them in these Q&As. But you can go to the next slide. And so again, the application and selection process, the window opened on the 20th and it will close that Friday at 5 p.m. Applicants can expect an initial follow-up from us within several weeks of submission, and then we'll conduct a kind of multi-stage review process. We'll look at eligibility first, and then we'll engage in a deeper assessment to ensure that there's alignment, readiness, and that the potential for impact is there. Our diligence process does include interviews with leadership and staff and some key stakeholders. We'll also do a review of programmatic and operational documents like a logic model, some of your impact metrics, and if it's appropriate, we'll hope to conduct site visits. Our goal is to communicate funding decisions no later than July, hopefully much sooner than that. If you can go on to the next slide. So we received a lot of questions about what ABC is looking for in proposals. And in the interest of fairness and transparency, we will not be holding individual one-on-one conversations with organizations to discuss proposal ideas. But instead, what we've done here is provide a set of guiding questions to really help folks think through their approach. And so we encourage organizations to start with the why. You know, what specific drivers of absenteeism are you trying to address in the community or school? That is, again, one of those focus priorities. That is a requirement. It must be focused in those communities that we outlined previously. You know, what are those specific drivers? And if your intervention already exists elsewhere, what would make it meaningfully different in that local context? We're also asking organizations to reimagine common intervention. So how does your approach go beyond what schools and CBOs already do? We're looking for work that will really complement what's already taking place and not just replicate what's already existing within the community or within the school building. Our hope is that we can avoid parallel work and really push for integration. So what can be different through this partnership and collaboration? And then finally, we believe that there's an opportunity to really innovate in structure and not just programming. So really thinking about what new roles, routines, or touch points will this partnership introduce? And how could we use time, space, or staffing differently to really support attendance, engagement, and belonging? So again, these are some guiding questions, not meant to limit your thinking, but to help you build strong proposals that show how they can build on the landscape and add real value. You can go on to the next slide. Again, these are just some ideas taking from some of the challenges that were identified in the landscape report. We know that transportation is a barrier for many. And so what could it look like for a school and a community-based organization or another organization to design a transportation approach that includes pickup points and walking school buses or student design transit routes? Again, these are ideas, not things that folks should pitch just because we've mentioned them, but it's really to inspire innovation. Folks could pitch family labs. We know that caregivers can partner with schools to co-design and execute attendance and engagement practices and policies. We've read in the research that home visiting can be really powerful, and it can be a real barrier for schools to implement alone. And so what opportunities are there to create some partnerships where schools and organizations come together to engage in home visiting? And then finally, that ninth grade transition is really important in establishing a strong sense of belonging. And so what could it look like for a model that pairs family onboarding, a transition team, a student voice, and personalized attendance outreach to really build that belonging from day one? So again, these are all just ideas to inspire thinking and to spur innovation. You can go on to the next slide. And so who is eligible to apply? You'll see here that 501c3 nonprofit organizations, collaboratives with a fiscal sponsor, and for-profit organizations with a fiscal sponsor or as part of a collaboration. Organizations can be based outside of Chicago, assuming that they can demonstrate strong community partnerships and establish local relationships. Current and past ABC grantees are eligible, but proposals must distinguish how this work is distinct from currently funded activities. And then finally, schools may not apply independently. They are a required partnership, but they cannot be the primary applicant. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Megan for the rest of the questions.
Okay, thanks, Natalie. So just a little bit about the budget. Our model is to provide general operating support, and so grant funds through this initiative would also follow suit there. But the budget should reflect the core costs that are needed to really run your program model and deliver on the outcomes. Admin and overhead costs, of course, can be included, but we will be asking as part of the application for a budget narrative that justifies all the expenses and how the budgets were developed. We do prioritize that resources are being directed more so towards program delivery and outcomes. And so as you think about your budget, it should also reflect that emphasis. And we have included categories to help you develop your budget. There's not a required template, but the budget should follow the categories listed here on the screen. So salaries, benefits, other collaborators, travel, equipment and software, project expenses, learning and PD, and other. Okay, and so we will take a pause here from the questions that we have up on the screen and take a moment to respond to some questions that are coming in through the chat.
Let's see, I'm scrolling through to see which ones we haven't addressed. Are schools eligible for funding directly, or do we need to be partnered with the CBO or other orgs? Yes, you need to have a partnership in place, and organizations should be the direct applicants in the proposal. So while the school partnership is required, the school cannot be the sole primary applicant. Is that clear? Hopefully, yes. Are MOUs required at the time of submission? They are not required, but we do ask that you indicate that the partnership MOU is in progress. That does need to be fully in place for us to be able to award grants. If we do not fit into the communities of focus, so this is targeted toward those communities of focus. So if services are not delivered in those communities, you will not be eligible for this RFP. What else did I miss, team?
There's a question around how many awards we anticipate making, and then also timeline for funding. So I'm thinking about it being 1 year of funding and how we would recommend we think about continuing successful efforts.
The first question, this is 1 year of funding, but assuming that all goes well, we would continue our funding past the first year. And so our goal is not to fund 1 year and then just back out. It really will be renewed, assuming that we have a successful partnerships, that goals that we've all agreed upon are met. So yes, it's year one, but with the possibility of renewal. What was the other question? How many?
How many awards we anticipate making?
We anticipate making at least 3, but it really does depend on the proposals that come in, the requested budgets, at minimum 3 grant awards.
There's also a question, Natalie, specifically about why North Lawndale was not included in the focus communities.
Yeah, and we totally recognize that chronic absenteeism is an issue across the city in every community, maybe except one. Unfortunately, we just don't have the resources at this time to reach every community. And so we started with those 6, but the hope and intention is that we are able to secure resources and eventually expand beyond those 6 priority communities. But that's kind of our starting point for now. But again, hopefully we'll be able to scale to other communities.
There's also a question about if we don't fit in the focus communities, would you say this may not be the right opportunity for us?
Yes, if you are not delivering the intervention in the community, then you will not be eligible for this funding opportunity. If you were looking to expand to one of these communities, then you would be eligible.
Also lifting up a question here, if the school we are partnering with is a block outside of the specific communities, but serves a majority of kids from a specific community, is that okay?
That's a really good question. I did see a question about that is related. We know that students travel across communities for schools, right? That's commuter city. And the intention is that the school is ideally located within the community. We could be open. I think I would need more information to be able to give a clear answer. So if that person just wants to email the Everyday Counts email, we can do some digging on our end and then respond. But ideally, they're located within the community. Will it be expected for agencies to cover multiple focus communities? We don't have any expectations. We really are looking for the organizations to put together proposals that align with their expertise and capacity. And so if you feel you're able to go deep on one community, then we suggest you put that proposal forward. If you feel you have the capacity and resources and expertise to really expand across many, then I would suggest you do that. But we are not setting any kind of parameters or expectations around how many communities you have to serve. Do we have a map that shows your definition of each community area? We don't have a map. We're going off of the traditional community area maps. I could point people to our Youth Opportunity dashboard where you can see the breakdown by community, and that is what we're using.
There's also a question, Natalie, about how many expected participants.
We also defer to the organization, the intervention, the communities that they're choosing to target. So we do not have an expectation around how many folks you have to serve. We really are deferring to the organizations and their intervention.
I also see a great question here from Lily. For the prevention part of our program model directed to at-risk elementary students, we would want to make the program available to all students. However, additional targeted supports would be available specifically for those identified as at risk. Is that acceptable, or do you need all program activities to be limited to students meeting those tiered thresholds for chronic absenteeism?
That is acceptable. I'm reading it as you were reading it, so I just wanted to make sure I understood it. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's part of what we're looking for, that an organization can propose programming that will be differentiated based on the needs of each student, and so that sounds like it aligns perfectly. Can folks also go off mute and say you could also ask the question if anyone feels like they want to voice over their
There's there's a question about whether Inglewood refers to both Inglewood and West Inglewood.
It does. So for the purposes of our RFP, we've combined Inglewood into one. Can the CBO hire or utilize other individuals to deliver this work? Yes, that is again something that organizations should clearly outline and put together in their budget proposal. We anticipate that depending on the size of the intervention and the size of the proposal, you may need to hire additional staff. And so as long as that's clearly outlined in the proposal with a clear rationale, that's completely fine.
This is a question I'm sure others may also have on their mind. I don't think we answered. Can an eligible program model focus solely on high schools in one or more of the target communities, but not elementary schools? The answer is yes. Natalie, do you want to explain?
The answer is yes. And if you want to go back to slide 11, where we have the community breakdown. So we did our best to provide a framework for how to think about approaching interventions in these communities. So it's the community one. I forgot what slide it is, but it's. And so in some communities, if I'm remembering correctly, of South Lawndale, there's a clear need of both prevention and intervention at the high school level. So that's where a community that would make total sense to really target high school students. And so I would really encourage folks to just sit with this information and to think about where your efforts could be targeted based on the age bands and the needs that we identified in our landscape report. We are recording this webinar, so it'll be available on our website for the folks who weren't able to join us at the top of the hour.
Hi, Natalie. This is Rosa Zamora with New Root. I noticed that there was some folks that were asking if they're able to apply as a school. And there's probably a lot of organizations here who can support those schools. So I'm wondering if there are folks on here, if there might be a way to connect with them, because I would really not want to miss the opportunity to be able to support them if there's a way to share, what those resources might be.
Thank you so much, Rosa. This is exactly the collaboration and communication we're hoping to inspire. So if there are schools that are interested in getting connected to programming or have exploratory conversations, please let us know. And if you'd like for us to share your information, we can. Obviously, we would need you to say you're interested. But if there are any schools here that are interested in learning more, please feel free to drop something in the chat.
There's a budget question, Natalie, about while the funds may be general operating, it seems that a programmatic budget is required for this funding. Is that correct? And for organizations proposing new innovative models, the budget should reflect only the new program activities and not the broader general work. So clarification on that.
For organizations proposing new innovative program models. We do want to understand the cost of the programming, but it is general operating. So it's a both and in that it is general operating. Obviously, the programmatic budget would allow us to understand the intervention and direct cost associated with that. Oh, I lost it.
But yes, the budget is intended to reflect the proposed program pilot, and not your broader organization if this is just a subset of all the services that you provide. As part of our diligence process, should applicants move forward in the process, we, assess, we will be assessing your broader organizational financial picture and financial health. But for the purposes of the application and developing that budget, yes, it is intended to focus on the proposed work.
Another great question about collaboration. If an applicant chooses to take a multi-pronged approach, could we partner with multiple CBOs that specialize in different areas?
You can partner
Yes.
with multiple collaborations. That again is at the discretion of the organization and the proposal. It's not required, but we definitely are open to that. So you don't have to stick to one partner. It really is about what your idea is and how your proposal meets the needs of the communities. This data was collected in the 24-25 school year. Patterns don't change immediately. Yes, we should expect the data to change or not. We haven't seen a lot of shifts in absenteeism year over year. They've stayed pretty consistent across the board. But yes, this data again is a snapshot of one school year, and that was before. For some communities that have faced immigration enforcement, we know that the data there already looks very different. And so that's definitely true. And again, this is just a snapshot and a starting framework for thinking about how we can tailor interventions for different communities based on the attendance bands.
Thanks, Natalie. I just wanted to provide a little bit of context or just ask context for the question. Reason asking because to your point about the high school students not having, there not being as many high school students within certain communities, just was wondering if there's been any transition showing in those numbers since. That's all. Thank you.
Not yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a PDF page of all the Google form questions?
Yes.
There is.
Yes, there is. If you go to our website, and this is also on the PowerPoint that we will email out. If you go to our website and click the link to the application, in that you will see a link to to view the questions in a PDF form.
How involved is CPS with the implementation of the support of whoever is granted? It depends on the intervention. And so again, our RFP does require a school partnership, so they have to be engaged at some level. To what extent really depends on the intervention proposed, but this is meant to support schools through those school CBO partnerships. The activities can be done outside of school hours, or they could be delivered during the school day. Again, it all depends on the intervention. And we are deferring to organizations based on, again, their skills, expertise, experience to propose ideas and then to define what engagement with that school partner will look like. Maybe 2 more minutes for questions, though I think they slowed down. Is there a question that wasn't answered that someone wants to voice over, or?
Someone was wondering if does Inglewood refer to Inglewood and West Inglewood?
Yes, we said West Inglewood and Inglewood, so both are included in the larger Inglewood community. Okay. Well, I don't think I'm seeing any other questions. If you go to the last slide, I just want to make sure folks see all of the relevant links. I think we've dropped them in the chat as well. There's our website, There's a funding overview. There's the full landscape analysis. It's an 100+ page report, so it might take you a while to get through, but I really encourage you to read it. We've also prepared an FAQ, and we'll be updating it just to make sure that it continues to respond to some of the questions that came up today, which were really great. Then the link to the application is also included there. And for folks who had some of those very specific questions, feel free to email us at the everydaycounts@abetterchicago.org email address. We're going to be very responsive and really encourage you to reach out if you have an application related question. Again, we won't be able to meet with you one-on-one to discuss your proposal, but if you have a clarifying question, we're happy to respond to that. Assuming there are no more questions, thank you so much for your interest and for your time. We're really excited about the proposals that we receive, and we encourage you to leverage partnerships and to just think outside the box as much as possible. But we're excited to be able to support this incredible work across the communities. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you all. Bye.